Grab a cup of tea or listen as you go, ladies. This is your hour with Dr. Zoe, your life and relationship coach, with encouragement, on-point insight, inspiring guests, health tips, and advice. Dr. Zoe helps busy women keep their mind in the game by redefining your superwoman. You're listening to The Dr. Zoe Show.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Dr. Zoe, and you're listening to The Dr. Zoe Show. You are a pretty amazing woman who is strong and capable and sometimes tired. And remember, it's always okay to rest. Rest, but just don't quit. There is strength in the journeys, ladies. This show is not for fabled beings with capes who have it all together. This show is for sometimes struggling superwomen. We all struggle sometimes, and what that means is that this show is for all women. If you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. We talk here about things that matter to busy women all over the world. Every woman has a superpower, and my goal as your life coach is to help you find it, embrace it, and share it with the world. I encourage you in your struggles, and I always share some of my own. I give you tips and advice to make your life a little easier. We are redefining your superwoman. We're here today live on laradionow.com every Tuesday from 12 to 1. For those of you who can't listen, you can always listen to the replays on iTunes. If you don't have an iPhone, Google, Stitcher, Libsyn, YouTube, you can just search for The Dr. Zoe Show, Redefining Your Superwoman. And if you know a woman who may benefit from some of our topics, please spread the love and share my show. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, Dr. Zoe Talks, and you can listen to episodes there. You can text the word JOIN to 38470 to become part of my tribe and get my free monthly newsletters where you'll get freebies, monthly tips, encouragement, and emails, insight right into your inbox. So I'm excited today to have our guest, Melissa Maimone, and I'm going to be introducing her in just a minute, right after our health tip section, where I'm going to be talking about wine. Don't stop listening. It's going to be an encouraging, a little bit educational talk about women and wine. And if we have time, we're going to follow up with some real talk. And today with Melissa, we're going to be talking about how to make friends with our deficits and her book, Gathering Dandelions. This is going to be a really rich talk about dealing with depression, anxiety, and other things that we might feel shameful about in our life and reframing them into beautiful bouquets. So next up, health tips. Remember, your mind and body are intimately connected. You can't have health in one without health in the other, and that is why I do a health tip segment. Healthy looks different on everybody, so stop comparisons, ladies. I spend time researching various trends on my health journey so that I can help you on yours. And today, I'm going to be hitting a little bit below the belt, and I'm going to be talking about your wine. I promise, I'm not trying to take away your mommy juice. That's one of the things that's been called, for good reason. But my concern about wine and women has been growing over time. And because I feel so strongly about our health, I just have to address it. So 2/3 of American women consume alcohol regularly. And remember before I talked about swinging that pendulum left or right is generally never healthy. So we need to come back to the middle. And I've seen all the great Facebook and Instagram memes about moms and women and their wine. And so I'm just going to talk honestly about its place in our life. First of all, I can say that drinking a glass of wine with a best friend and really great conversations is just one of the treasures of life. So I definitely get that. But, it's funny because as I watch TV shows, as I watch, social media, it is so prevalent. And as I talk to my friends, my other mom friends, my other friends, it's so prevalent how much wine plays. And it's not always wine, sometimes other alcohol, but wine is just so socially accepted, even more so than other types of alcohol. And wine has become a way for us to get through the day. especially when that day includes an increasing number of tasks and roles and pressures to compete, get everything done. Sometimes wine is just our reward for getting through the day, right? And even wine companies know this. One of the major wine companies, the slogan is, "It's where you become you again." Not mom, not colleague, not chauffeur, not cleaner upper. So wow, how powerful is that? And we all know, and I think we all kind of attach that meaning, that not scientific knowledge that, wine is healthy for us, right? So one glass of wine is really good for us. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too. But there was another quote that really struck me, and I don't remember who wrote it. I think it's been kind of passed down, but it said, "Women drink because their lives are hard. Not violently hard, not tragically hard, but middle to upper class, paycheck to paycheck hard." And this is sobering but true. And this is why I have this show, to talk about the real struggles we women face in day-to-day life and to help you create healthy balance in your lives. So if you recognize yourself in what I'm talking about, there should be no guilt, no condemnation, ladies. Just pay attention. And I'm going to give you some stats to work with as you think of the place that wine has in your life. So stats. Women tend to drink more in private than men. This is interesting. I took a little bit of time thinking about why this is. Now we all, we drink with our friends, and that's of course what we do too, but we tend to drink more privately. And the concern that I have about that is that if we're drinking more privately, it's to fulfill something, another need that maybe we have that's not being fulfilled. And so I just want you to be aware of that and to think about that. When you're getting ready to have your glass, what's going on? What do you want that glass to do for you? What are you trying to forget or calm or get away from? So, medical stats. Alcohol changes the way estrogen is metabolized in a woman's body. So what that means is that estrogen increases in women who drink. So and that matters because higher estrogen levels increase cancer, period. So what we know, and a lot of women are drinking that one glass of wine a day. One glass of wine per day, number one, it can lower your risk for heart disease and high blood pressure. That's a good thing. But it can also increase your risk for cancer. So what does this mean? You need to know your risks. You need to know your familial risks. Do you have familial risks? Do you have higher risks for cancer in your family, or do you have higher risks for blood pressure and heart attacks, heart disease? So obviously, if you're higher risk for heart disease and blood pressure, you might be doing yourself a good thing. But if you have a higher risk of cancer in your family, you could be doing yourself a bad thing. So for premenopausal women, the risks increase by 5%. That's cancer risk by drinking one drink per day. For postmenopausal women, the cancer risk increases by 9%. Just so you know. So that one glass a day actually increases cancer. So what does that mean? It means if you're having less than one glass a day, you're probably fine. If you have one glass every other day, you're probably fine. So bottom line, enjoy your wine in less than moderation. Know your risks. Pay attention when you're substituting alcohol for getting your emotional needs met. If that's what you're doing, then you need to address it and make some changes. That said, I'm looking forward to my ladies' night out with my friend Christine, celebrating her upcoming birthday. So women, balance, just balance. So I'm very, very excited to introduce my guest, Melissa Maimone. She is an author, motivational speaker, mother, and wife. And she and I connected when we spoke a few days ago because both of us have special needs kids. And for any of you special needs moms out there, you know that connection that kind of happens instantly. So that was really great. And she's going to talk about her own journey with depression and struggles in life and how we can gather our dandelions into beautiful bouquets. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zoe, for letting me be here today. I'm thrilled, and I loved listening to your opening comments. Thank you so much. Those were fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, important stuff. And as I talked about substituting emotional needs, right, for alcohol, let's talk a little bit about your journey.
I was raised in a really sort of normal middle-class family in the San Fernando Valley in California. And I had a great childhood in a lot of ways. And my parents are still married. They've been married. They just celebrated their wedding anniversary, 54 years. Wow. And so I grew up in a cohesive childhood and things like that. But there was something inside of me that doubted that I was enough. I sort of had this sneaking suspicion that something was wrong with me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and I probably couldn't even articulate it into words as I was growing up, but the sneaking suspicion started to grow. And about the time I was 13 and 14, as you know, our hormones really start to set in, and it affects everything. And like you said, the body and the mind are integrated, and my mind more rapidly started to become convinced that there was something really wrong. And so my coping mechanisms, as I started to get into high school and things like that, I often cut myself. And when I was a teenager, so many long years ago, nobody talked about that.
Right.
I didn't tell anybody, and I didn't know anybody did it. I didn't know it was a thing. And so I'm grateful that that's being talked about now, but I didn't talk about it at all. And when I was in high school, probably about my junior year, a friend of mine was telling me how she went and talked to the school counselor and how awesome, Mr. Nelson was, and how Mr. Nelson really helped her. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go talk to Mr. Nelson. He's going to make it better. And I went and talked to Mr. Nelson and sort of poured my soul out to him and told him what was going on for me. And he was just quiet for a minute. And then he said, I am concerned about you.
Wow.
And he said, you need some help. And I'm thinking, well, that is not what you told Cindy, okay, I thought you were going to wrap this all up.
Right.
And it sort of set me on the journey to discovering that I needed to take care of myself in a different way. And I started to go down the path of getting help. And it's taken me a long time, and it's taken me a lot of years, and there's been a lot of stops and starts with that. But it was a really pivotal moment in my life where I started to learn that depression is part of my makeup, and I was hoping that it would be part of my past.
Yes.
And it 46 years later has not been. It has become and has continued to be part of my present.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. And as a clinician, me hearing that, you kind of embody the genetic description of depression. And I've talked about depression a lot and how you can work with it, where it comes from. And I've talked before about sometimes it is really chemically genetic in your body. And that's a totally different depression from a type that will come up because of a life transition or because of other things that might be going on in your life. And so I think that was a perfect example of that. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. I mean, and I didn't know that it was part of my chemical makeup because high school's hard. Let's face it, it's hard for the best of us.
It is.
So when you're struggling, you don't know whether or not it's maybe part of your chemical makeup or if there's just things that are going on. And then the next time I really struggled with it was after the birth of my daughter. And, like you said in the introduction, my daughter has special needs and I adore her. But was
she your first?
She was. Okay. She was my first. And they didn't diagnose her when she was in utero or anything like that. They didn't really know what was going on. And it was a slow process of discovering that she had special needs in the first 2 years of her life. And I was taking her to all these doctors and the geneticists, and I see you nodding your head because you know the whole thing.
In there, yes.
Yeah, and I started. It makes your world really small, really fast.
It does.
And loneliness is so prevalent in leading to depression. And I was lonely and I was overwhelmed, and so I started struggling with it again. So even then, it's like you couldn't necessarily point to the fact that it was chemical.
Correct. Right. Given at that point but when you talked about just from early on having that feeling of being different and some of the things that you were feeling very early on, that points to the chemical aspect of it. And the fact that in your life, there wasn't a lot of trauma early on that would have produced something like that. But you said something really important, and moms with special needs kids have a much higher rate of depression and anxiety. And just just like you said, a big part of it is the isolation, that sense of, your world kind of closes in. And there are a whole lot of other moms that you might meet that are like you and dealing with the same things that you're doing. And the isolation really, really can cause some depression. And so one of the things you need to do is find other people like you, other people who are struggling, to create a sense of community. What I love is that the internet has provided that for so many people, whereas before it was hard to find, other moms who had some of the same things going. So if you are listening live, we are here with Melissa Maimone. We're going to be talking about her book, Gathering Dandelions, and we're talking with any struggling women really about identifying some of the things that you might perceive in your life as weaknesses and figuring out how to turn them into strengths. We will be back in just a minute. People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. kissmeorganics.com. Welcome back. This is the Dr. Zoe Show, and I am here with my guest, Melissa Maimone, and I'm just so excited to be talking to her about a difficult topic. We're going to be talking about depression, but we're going to be talking about reframing some negative things in our life into positive. So thank you, Melissa. You just shared a little bit with us about your journey and your understanding, kind of how you came to an understanding of your depression in your life. And so can you tell me about how you got to a point where you were able to reframe it?
I got married, and then after I had Elizabeth and things like that, things sort of settled down after, and I went through this other bout of depression, and then things got better again. And then things were going really well. Like, my marriage was great. I had a son and the kids were great. Things had steadied off with Elizabeth. I had a great job. I had great friends. I had come to a faith that was deep and abiding in my life. So I had a foundation that felt very sure. And then I started to struggle again. And I was so disoriented because I thought, well, wait a second. I've got a great husband. I believe in God. And I have great kids and everything's okay. Why am I struggling? Yeah. And I fought it and I felt a tremendous sense of shame about it. And I didn't tell anyone. And then sometimes if I would sort of tell a few people, a lot of times people either wanted to give me a lot of advice or they actually made me feel bad. And they were like, well, you just need to believe in God more, or you need to have more faith, or you just need to appreciate what you have and, just be grateful. And I wished that all those things would make me feel better, but they didn't. And, then I started to tell a little bit more people about it. And that was when things started to change, because I discovered that in my sharing about it, that I was connecting with other people. And I started to think, if I've done all these things to try and get rid of it, I mean, I did therapy and all those things helped. They all helped. I cannot say enough. If you are struggling with that, get help. Find somebody that can, walk you through that. If I'm sure we'll probably touch on medication, things like that. There are a lot of ways for you to help that. Right. But at the end of the day, I really think acceptance was what turned my life around. And it really started with finding a few people who actually accepted that part of me and who didn't try and change it. It didn't try and pour out advice to me, but just sat with me in it. And I started to realize that maybe it's not the boogeyman. And that, I prayed a lot and I asked God to take it away. I'm like, come on, you can do anything. You're part of the Red Seas. I gave him like the whole list of all the things that he's done, as if he needed
just in case he didn't remember.
Exactly. Just, reminding him of the facts. And I think he said no.
Yeah.
And I started to think, well, if he says no, then if he's comfortable with it being there, then maybe I can get comfortable with it too. And so I sort of sat down in the darkness and I looked around. Instead of running and hitting the walls and bumping my shins and trying so desperately to get out of it, I just sat down and said, I think I'm going to stay here for a little bit. And it changed my life.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that the shame aspect is so strong, and so many women sit in shame.
Yes.
And just feel it and don't feel able, and sometimes do exactly what you said. They reach out a little bit and then they feel rejected or they feel judged, and so then they back in. And I'm so glad that you were able to say that you had that same experience. You felt it, you backed back in, but you were able to get back out and to continue to talk about it until you found people who could accept it. Do you remember what types of things they said that made you feel accepted?
I remember one story in particular. Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
Okay, so I had shared with somebody who made me feel very bad about struggling so much, and I was going to therapy at the time, and my therapist recommended that maybe I need to consider getting on medication, which was devastating to me, devastating, because I felt like a total failure. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't handle my own life, everything else. So I didn't tell anybody else for quite a while. And I had a friend of mine, Michelle, and Michelle had like this short, spiky, like pink hair, like she had pink hair before anybody had pink hair.
Yes.
And she smoked like a chimney, and she like went to church with me, and she loved God and everything, but she was just the real deal. And finally one day we're taking a big walk, and I'm walking, and I finally decide to pour my heart out to her, and I'm telling her, and I'm like, and I don't know what to do, and I think I'm depressed, and the therapist says I need help, and blah, blah, blah. And she listens to my whole diatribe for 20 minutes, and then I get all done, and she's just quiet, and she takes a big drag of her cigarette, and she's like, dude, if the medicine helps you, then who really cares?
Wow.
And that was it. That was all she said. That was her big advice to me. And I can't tell you how life-changing that was, because she brought this huge thing and she shrunk it down. Like, it wasn't a big deal. She didn't ever make it about like what she thought about it. It just wasn't a big deal to her. And suddenly I realized, oh my gosh, it's not a big deal to Michelle.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a bigger deal to me than it actually needs to be in my life. And depression no longer, it has its place in my life, but it does not drive the car. It does not say where I'm going and what I'm doing, and it does not tell me the essence of who I am. And it used to do that. And now that I've come to sort of explore it and accept it and to realize like this is maybe part of my makeup, I'm not so afraid of it anymore. And there's a proper care and feeding to your soul. And I think we need to, if we pay attention and we see the things that we are most shameful of, and we start to find a way to embrace them and accept them and to be protective of them and to live with them well, the shame goes away. It's a remarkable process. And shame is what isolates us, and isolation is what can lead to more depression. So it's a big fat circle a lot of times.
It is a circle. And that is what I want to focus on today, how we can take those deficits and the places that we feel the most shamed about and turn them around so that we can use those. And actually, they can become our strength. And you absolutely did that. You wrote a book, Gathering Dandelions. And if you hadn't gone through that journey, there wouldn't be this book.
That's right.
And you wouldn't be able to encourage women in the way that you are. And so I think that's just amazing. And we are going to go on a break and come back and talk a little bit about how we can reframe that. We are here with my guest, Melissa Maimone, and your website. How can people get a hold of you?
They could go to my website, melissamaimone.com. My last name, it's Melissa, and then my last name is Maimone.com. And you can go there and get all the information. And I have a blog and send out monthly, email journals, and I'm on YouTube and yada yada, all those places. But you can go to my website and get all the information.
Wonderful. And you can get her book, Gathering Dandelions, Amazon. Yep. I got it on Kindle. I have a nice fresh copy here. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
But we're going to go on break, and we will be back in just a minute. People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. kissmeorganics.com. Hi there, you are back with Dr. Zoe, and we are talking here with my guest, Melissa Maimone, about her book, Gathering Dandelions, and how you can take difficult things in your life like depression and turn them around and use them as strengths. There's a quote by Brené Brown, and it says, "Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are." And so yeah, because as you were talking, I kept thinking, there's that quote. So I wanted to look it up, because really what you're talking about is figuring out how to really be authentic with yourself and with others, and just embracing those deficits. So let's give our listeners some real solutions. How do we start on that journey? How do we start on that path for a woman who is really struggling, whether it's depression or other things that she's struggling with in her life? What are some tips that you could give?
When I was a kid, about 7 years old, I lived in an area where, like, on the side of our house, all these dandelions grew. And they were profuse, and I loved them. 7-year-olds, you love them.
Of course.
And so I gathered them all up. I made a bouquet, and I nervously went next door to the neighbor, who was an elderly woman. She was a widower, a widow, and so she lived by herself. And I went over there, and she opened the door, and I said, "I brought you flowers." And she looked at them, and she was very sweet. She did not mean to be hurtful.
Sure.
But she said, "Oh, sweetheart, thank you. Did you know these are weeds?" And I was embarrassed, and I believed for the rest of my life that dandelions are weeds. But you know what the difference is between a weed and a flower?
No.
Nothing.
Wow.
There is no difference. There is no scientific difference between a weed and a flower. The only difference is whether or not you want it to grow where it does.
Wow.
And I think a lot of times our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities are places that grow where we don't want them to grow. And we sort of convince ourselves, if I didn't have this thing, then I would actually be the person who I want to be. I would be more authentic somehow. I would be the more me that I want to be if those things were taken. And we treat our weaknesses like dandelions that sort of need to be plucked out.
Or hidden.
Right. And that somehow they're unsightly. And if we can start to redefine that they're actually things that perhaps are the most beautiful parts of ourselves, and maybe they don't need to be plucked out and thrown away. Maybe they need to be gathered up and held well and made beautiful, because it really is all perspective. And I will say, things like my accomplishments are awesome, but the things that connect me to other people are a common suffering and our common experiences with things that probably are less ideal than we wanted them to be. And that's really what connects us as human beings, is our authenticity.
Yes.
But sometimes we have to there's so much in the way of our authentic selves and who we think we should be authentically. There's a lot there, and we have to sort of start to get rid of those things. And that takes some work. And it actually, I believe, takes some grief. And because we do have to grieve the parts of us that we wish were different than they are.
Yes, we do. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that is the first step. Because sometimes and often we want to just push it away and move forward.
Yes.
So I don't want to deal with that. I want to just move forward. I want to be happy. Instead of really stopping and looking and saying, this right here now is my life. And this is what is in my life. And maybe this part of it I don't like, and it's okay to grieve that loss. Because, clinicians, we say, loss kind of compounds loss, right? So the more loss you have, the more compounded your grief gets. And the reason is because you don't tend to grieve it. if you can grieve it and let it go, then the next loss doesn't have to be compounded. You know, you see people who, you know, some little thing might happen in their life and they fall apart, right? But they're not falling apart necessarily over that little thing. It's all the other things that they weren't able to deal with or process and get to that point. You and I talked about that poem, because as you talked about dealing with your loss, and there's a poem, and I'm looking for it right now, and it's a poem, I think, that was originally made for moms with special needs. And so Melissa and I both were very aware of the poem, but it's really about grieving something big in your life that isn't going to go away. And that's what we're talking about. And so I'm going to read this poem. It's called Welcome to Holland. When you're going to have a baby, or for any of you guys, when there's anything that you're looking forward to in your life, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. When you buy a bunch of guidebooks and you make wonderful plans, the Colosseum, the Michelangelo, David, the gondolas in Venice, you may learn some handy phrases in Italian, and it's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands, and the stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks, and you must learn a whole new language, and you'll meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while, and you catch your breath, you look around, and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills, and Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy, and they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. And the pain of that will never, ever, ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't go to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland.
Makes me want to cry.
I know, every time
Make me cry, just,
every time I read that poem. And it was such a gift to me, after I had my daughter, and that grief is what it is. And so I think what we're talking about is really being aware of, so things might not have turned out the way that you thought they were going to turn out. Maybe you have something big that you're going to struggle with for the rest of your life, like depression. But it's about recognizing, what are the good things in this? How can I still have a rich, full life, maybe even better than I could have imagined, in the place where I am? So some of the things that you talked about in your book, one of the things I want you to talk about real quickly is praying naked.
Well, my book is Gathering Dandelions. It's called Meditations and Musings on Faith, Fracture, and Beauty Mistaken for a Weed.
Love that.
And they are short chapters. They're all independent of one another. So I always say it's good bathroom reading, because you can pick it up and you can pick up and look at any chapter and you can just start reading there. And we've talked a little bit about living an authentic life.
Right.
And it's not specifically about depression. It's about all kinds of things. I cover that in there, and I talk about that, but I talk about, oh my goodness, taking my kids to the pool when they were little. I talk about Robin Williams in one. I talk about going to Mexico on a missions trip one time and how kind of weird that was for me, like all kinds of stuff. But the one about praying naked is I worked at a church for about 15 years. And so, and that was kind of how I really fell in love with ministering to women and talking to women and encouraging them and motivating them. And this sweet girl came up to me one day and she just said, "Listen, I have a question." And she was like kind of all quiet and secretive and looking around. I'm like, okay. And I'm expecting like this big bomb to be dropped on me. And she says, "I pray in the shower." And I said, "Okay." And she goes, "But I don't know if I'm supposed to." And I was like, "Well, why?" And she goes, "Because I'm naked. And I don't know if I'm supposed to talk to God when I'm naked." And I loved her heart.
Of course.
Because she wanted to she's figuring out, like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And the fact is if we can go and be our most vulnerable before God and before others, a few safe people. We do not need to be naked in front of everyone.
Yes.
Okay. But there's a few people that it's like, you can go and you can hang out with your girlfriends for the weekend and y'all share a hotel room and it's like nobody cares, you know, because there's a trust there. And because you can be vulnerable in that situation. And really what her question was more about vulnerability than it was about whether or not she had her clothes on. And vulnerability is something, it feels so weird to be vulnerable. It actually might feel like we're not doing something right if we feel very vulnerable, if we feel unsure about ourselves.
And it can be terrifying.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, it can be. And it's, I won't say it's like my favorite feeling in the world, but it's a feeling that I've come to trust that I'm probably moving in the right direction if I'm feeling vulnerable. You talk about women and just leaning into our strengths and things like that. And it's like, and I loved what you said in the opening, because our strengths are so often born out of our vulnerabilities.
They are.
And if we try and drum them up separately from that, we become people other people either don't like or feel intimidated by, and then we lose connection with other people. People want to know that we're alike in some way. And it's like, oh, do you have, sticky floors on your kitchen? It's like, oh, good, me too, And then that's where you really start to bond. And so vulnerability is a great antidote to loneliness.
That's true. And so it's getting over that fear and getting over that terror of opening yourself up to somebody and the fear that you can be hurt.
Yes.
Or not accepted.
That's right.
Yes.
It's scary. And the odds are you will be hurt. And the odds are you may be rejected. Now, if you allow someone into your life with whom you can be vulnerable, it's guaranteed they're going to hurt you. But that does not mean that they're bad. And it doesn't mean that they don't love you. You have to sort of use some good tools to figure out, is this a healthy person in my life? Like, is my husband just saying that because, he's had a long day or he just missed me in that? You don't have to go, okay, forget it. The marriage isn't going to work because he missed me on this thing. But find those people in your life who consistently, enough of the time, can help meet your needs. And don't ask one person to do all of that. It's too much for one person.
Absolutely. And it's too much for a spouse to meet all of those needs. I love what you said about the fact that you have to, number one, know who you're going to be vulnerable with, right? So you do want to choose wisely.
Yes.
And then when you open up to somebody, and this is with any relationship, we as humans, we hurt each other. We do. And so you have to pay attention. Was that about him or was that about her or was that about me? Was that a personal thing or is this how this person acts with everyone?
Right.
If it's how the person acts with everyone, it has nothing to do with you and it was not likely intentional.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to be willing to put ourselves out there and out there and out there and know that over time, we will find our people. We will find our tribe,
you
right?
Find your tribe. That's
if you continue to look. So that's one really good one. I think getting naked with yourself, getting naked with God, and then being willing to be vulnerable with other healthy people can help when you're really struggling with this kind of depression or any type of big loss in your life.
Yeah. And depression will try and make you think that you can't do that. And that's where you sort of have to decide, I'm going to make choices that go against what I actually feel inside. And I think even being vulnerable is one of those things that it's not congruent sometimes with our internal process. And that's okay.
Yeah, it is. And depression is going to make you feel like you can't do anything.
Yes. For sure.
Like everything is too hard and too difficult. And I loved what you said before about caring for those, right? So gathering up those dandelions and caring for them, taking care of them. So when we talk about the things that we struggle with in our life, we do have to take care of it. So if it is depression or if it is anxiety or if it is, an eating disorder or whatever things that might be going on in your life, you do have to take care. And sometimes that does include medication.
Yep.
Right? It does. Just like you would medicate any other
like diabetes
issue
or anything.
Yes, it does. Now I do, and I've talked about it before, I do feel that our whole society is over-medicated in general. And that's where we start to talk about that difference between a genetic depression and an environmental depression and the different types of therapies that you might want to utilize and for how long. Okay, we are here talking good talk with my guest, Melissa Maimone, and we are going to go on break, and you guys can check out her book, Gathering Dandelions. We'll see you in a minute. People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. kissmeorganics.com. Hi, welcome back. I'm here with my guest, Melissa Maimone, and we are talking about reframing some of our deficits into beautiful bouquets. And Melissa, over the break, you said something which I think is just so profound, that joy is not the opposite of sadness or depression. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think when I started talking about this in public, okay, this was not what I wanted to talk about. Like, this was a private thing.
When you started talking about depression?
Oh, yeah, okay. For sure. It was not like my platform. It wasn't, I wanted nothing to do with the topic. And it sort of came upon me because I talked about it maybe once or twice with people, on smaller stages and, with groups that were maybe more intimate. And the response was, I was so struck by the response. And so several people were saying, you need to talk about this more. You need to write about this. This needs to be where you live. And I just thought, I do not want to be the depression lady. Like, thank you, but no thank you. Right. It has a place in my life, but it's not my life. It really isn't. And so, but the thing is that I'm not the depression lady. I'm the joy lady, because.
And I just have to say, I can see the joy. I feel the joy when I met you over the phone, but even in meeting you, it just emanates from you.
Thank you. Well, it does, because I do believe that when you live authentically, it is a joyful, free thing. And when you are able to say, you know what, I'm able to do this, I probably can't do that. Like, there is no shame in that. There are certain things that I can't do very well. I can't go to a lot of, big gatherings. I get too overwhelmed. Excuse me. Not to say that I won't, but it's not good for me to have them all shoved into one weekend. And so I know these things about myself. And the more I live out of knowing where my limitations lie and embracing them and being protective of them, the more joyful life I have, because now I can come and I can give my full self and be fully present because I'm not overwhelmed.
Right.
And living a joyful life is not waiting for your circumstances to change. It is finding a deep knowing that you are accepted and that you are fully loved and fully known by God, and hopefully fully known by at least a couple people, enough to know that there is not something wrong with you that needs to be fixed and get right. It needs to be cared for, which is a tremendous difference. Being fixed and being cared for are two different things. And so we've talked about that. I mean, just real quick, yes, medication, I think, can be helpful, but I completely agree with you. We are far too over-medicated. And medication can sometimes be one of those things that it's like we're trying to pluck out the dandelions again. Like, we're just trying to get rid of it. But you're missing huge opportunities and gifts if your sole purpose in dealing with what it is that you're struggling with is just needs to be gotten rid of. You're missing a lot of gifts in there. And so I make sure that I exercise a lot. And I don't do I wish I could, lift weights and all that, but I have a little bit of back issue. And I take walks, and I take long walks. It's good for my soul. It's good for my body. It's good for my mind. And you need to make sure that you're taking care of your body and your mind and your environment, and to take care of all those things. And when you know that you have a weakness or a vulnerability, it's not time to hide it. It's time to care for it and to do those things and be proactive about it. And I think the first step starts in accepting it in a beautiful, full, embracing way, not in a I give up. It's like you said, I mean, there's a tremendous difference between letting go and giving up.
Yes.
And letting go is landing in Holland and saying, wow, there's windmills here.
Yeah.
This is really beautiful. And there is tremendous beauty to be found in our deepest struggles.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the show. And I just love what you just said, that joy is not the opposite of sadness or depression, that you can have both, both at the same time. And so my takeaways from the show are, a lot of us have shame, and we need to not live in our shame. We need to recognize that it's okay and necessary to grieve our losses, that we need to take that shame and instead become naked to ourselves, become naked to our friends and our family, and that will help us move into the right direction. And of course, that last one, that joy and sadness, or joy and difficulties, can exist at the same time. Thank you, Melissa. And you can get a hold of Melissa Maimone at her website, Melissa, 1L, MELISSA, You can also check out her book, Gathering Dandelions, Kindle, Amazon, probably everywhere.
Yep.
Google it. So next week, my guest is Stacy Fawcett. She is a Christian divorce attorney, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to her because she is, I would say, probably both therapist and attorney, helping people who identify as Christian go through a divorce. And we all come to that point, for different reasons. So I think it's going to be a great show. So thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Zoe Show. Tune in next week and every week on Tuesdays from 12 to 1 Pacific and 3 to 4 Eastern at laradionow.com, and check out reruns of our show on iTunes, Google Play, Libsyn, and YouTube, where I am your life and relationship coach. I help sometimes struggling superwoman keep your mind in the game by redefining your superwoman. Connect with me at drzoeshaw.com or any of my social medias at the handle Dr. Zoe Shaw. Join my free newsletter and get a copy of 30-Minute Life Transformation, The Secret to Getting Stuff Done, by texting the word JOIN to 38470. I look forward to speaking with you wonderful ladies on social media after the show. Have a great week.
You've been listening to The Dr. Zoe Show, redefining your superwoman, with your host, Dr. Zoe Shaw. Don't forget to sign up for her monthly newsletters to get encouragement, tips, and skills for keeping your mind in the superwoman game. Connect with her now at www.drzoeshaw.com. Tell your friends and subscribe to her podcast on iTunes. Join us next time for another edition of The Dr. Zoe Show.